Hello, I'm Richard Walker, and I'm a Jack the Ripper tour guide. And so I've read an awful lot of books on this Jack the Ripper case. It's a great story, of course, so many books have been written on the subject. It combines two of the biggest selling genres in fiction. The whodunit, it's definitely a great whodunit, and Agatha Christie has proved that's a big selling genre. She's the biggest selling novelist of all time. Stephen King also sold a lot of books, and he's focused on horror, of course, and he's been very successful. Jack the Ripper combines both of those genres in one story, and it's not fiction, it's true crime. And there is another ingredient in the story, and that's poverty. It's deep. Every book that delves into the world of Jack the Ripper must set the scene. Squalid, gaslit alleyways, where the wretched wander homeless and hungry, trying to survive a life of abject poverty. The story of Jack the Ripper is not unique in this. Poverty is an essential element in the stories of Charles Dickens and Arthur Conan Doyle, and they were not alone. Donald Rumbelow gives us an idea of the depth of this poverty at the time of the murders. Here's one example from his book, The Complete Jack the Ripper. In the house at 35 Hanbury Street, typical of the parish, there were 7 people in each room, with adult sons and daughters sleeping together on the floor. In none of the rooms was there more than one bedstead, and the only WC was on the ground floor. This was normally in such a filthy state that the tenants used their chamber pots, which, said the Reverend R.C. Billing, giving evidence to a House of Commons Select Committee, were left in the rooms for a very long time before being taken down and emptied in the yard. Staircase banisters had often been removed for firewood, and it was a common sight to see vermin-infested wallpaper hanging in strips from the walls. What furniture there was might consist of the broken-down remains of an old bedstead or table, but was more likely to be a wooden board across some bricks, or an old hamper or box turned upside down. The bed might be a sack of flea-infested straw. And the victims. The characters of the women killed by Jack the Ripper arrive in many of the books draped in the degradation of poverty. Polly Nichols was a typical Whitechapel whore, a gin-sodden derelict who routinely sold her body in any convenient staircase, alley or court for the price of a night's lodging. That's how Thomas Duffield describes Polly Nichols in the Ripper Code. Bruce Robinson describes Annie Chapman in They All Love Jack. Mrs. Chapman was a 47-year-old nothing with progressive lung disease that would probably have killed her if the Ripper hadn't. In the early hours of Saturday, 8th of September 1888, in want of 4 pennies for a bed, she went out hawking the only thing she had. Some of the books will look at the people who struggled to alleviate the worst of the suffering. Andrew Meehan's, William Thomas Stead, and in their own way the Reverend Samuel Barnett and his wife. None of the books explains how, after 200,000 or 300,000 years of evolution, the most advanced and complex life form that we know of in the universe, the only life force that knows there is a universe, managed to end up with such truly diabolical conditions in what was the richest city in the world. There have been hundreds of books written to unmask this killer. I have sometimes wondered if as many books had been written dedicated to addressing how we ended up with such abject poverty in Victorian London, we might not still be having to deal with it. Poverty has not gone away. The poverty of 19th century London was of a different order to that of our 21st century London, and that fact is sometimes offered as a sop to ease pressure on demands to deal with present-day poverty in modern London. However, Victorian levels of poverty still exist in our global village. Images of it are delivered in colour to our living rooms on a nightly basis. And there are those who say poverty has always existed and always will exist. The poor will always be with us. There are those who say the government needs to help the poor. Others say no, poverty must exist to motivate people to do a day's work. Some will argue there's nothing wrong with poverty, because poor people are happy people, while rich people are miserable. Assumptions about the Jack the Ripper case are made depending on the writer's worldview. And so it is with the assumptions that are made regarding poverty. I want to see what the hard evidence is. Among other things, I want to know why the chances of owning a secure home is more remote for young people today than it was a generation ago. Who knows where it might lead? I've done a lot of research attempting to understand the murders of 5 women living in poverty. Now I want to understand what the great minds of the 19th century understood about poverty. Charles Dickens might be a good place to start. I hope you'll join me in the next little video to see what he said about the poverty he saw around him. Thank you for listening. This is Richard Walker saying goodbye.